Hello, everyone. And my name is Christian Bugge Henriksen, and as the coordinator of the Food Shift 2030 project, it's a great pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this fourth Food Shift webinar. In the Food Shift 2030 project, we are working across 9 European city regions to transform the food system towards a low carbon circular future by empowering people to become active food citizens and influence the way their food is produced, consumed, and distributed within the city regions. Our Food Shift Accelerator Labs are bringing together citizens, SMEs, NGOs, and public authorities to accelerate sustainable food system innovations by maturing, combining, and upscaling them, and by sharing knowledge and experiences in public webinars like this. So with these words, I would like to pass on the word to Ben Reynolds from Sustain, who will be chairing this webinar.
Thank you, Christian. Welcome, good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. So the topic of today's webinar is: what role does urban and peri-urban agriculture play in city food systems in the context of COVID and climate change? This webinar will be joined by some great speakers to explore this issue and to ask and hopefully answer whether this activity is more or less important and practical in the context of current crises, including COVID and climate change. Will conventional or rural agriculture become less predictable, harder, less profitable? And will this drive a growth in urban and peri-urban agriculture? So this webinar, as Christian said, is the fourth run by Food Shift. Indeed, many of you joining us are part of the program. But for those who aren't, there's a couple of things I think are worth stressing. So Food Shift is about cities and city regions and looking at those levers peculiar or specific to those settings that can be used to shift the food system to make it more sustainable. It's also about innovation, and this might be social, it might be technological. So in this context, urban and peri-urban agriculture might seem like an odd area for innovation. After all, growing food in and around cities has gone on for millennia. The first cities were only able to exist because they grew food right up to the city walls. And urban agriculture exists in all continents and in most countries around the world. Sorry, what's my place? So, and you have organizations like FAO from the UN and people like RUAF who have worked for years to support these endeavors. So what is new? In my own work at Sustain, the Alliance for Better Food and Farming in the UK, over the last 15 years, I've witnessed a huge rise of interest and moreover activity, not just in the UK, but with the countries and cities all around the world that we've partnered with and shared information. Vancouver, for their Winter Olympics, created 2010 food growing spaces. For the London 2012 Games, we aim to go better by creating 2012 new community food growing spaces through our Capital Growth Programme, a network which now has over 2,700 such spaces. So all around the world, people are rethinking the role of food growing in cities. The reasons for this interest, the drivers for this change, the speakers will come on to in the webinar itself. But one thing that I think has shifted the gears in this change is how this has become a political issue rather than just personal. Access to land, community mobilization, supportive planning policies, food strategies and food partnerships and policy councils have all helped this growth, making food growing an ambition, putting a target to it and putting it on a footing with other agendas. One definition I read of innovation is the carrying out of new combinations. So in this way, combining old techniques with new ways of working, new technologies, enabling them for different communities, bringing new appeal to something timeless, making it resonate to new agendas and priorities. This is how urban and peri-urban agriculture, I believe, can be innovative. And today we have some great speakers who are going to tell you about their innovative work. If we can move on to the next slide. So first up, we're going to have Elsa Chiffard Carricabarou from Avignon, joined by Hugues Fortuna from the Ville d'Avignon. Next up, we'll be hearing from Barcelona, where we'll have Sally Bourdon from Fab Lab and the IAAC, joined with Rasmus Bjørngaard from Next Food. And then finally, we're going to be hearing from Bjorn Lowe who's the Executive Director at Edible Garden City, to tell us about his work in Singapore. We'll be followed then by a panel discussion. Before we start, a little housekeeping. Much of this relates to the buttons at the bottom of the Zoom screen. So direct questions for the speakers must be through the Q&A, and that general and tech questions should be put in the chat. I'm sure you'll have some great links as well to your own work you'd like to share. Please put that in the chat. The webinar is being recorded. We plan to make it available in the next week, and we're going to be emailing all registrants with a link to this and also to an anonymized Q&A. Also, simultaneous interpretation is being offered from French to English and vice versa, thanks to Laura and Lorenzo. So apologies to any French folk joining in who perhaps haven't caught a lot of what I'm saying, but please do now use the translation button at the bottom. And similarly, some of the presentations are going to be in French, so if you're not fluent in French, please use that to get the full force of what the presentations are trying to communicate. This is the first time we've actually used this simultaneous translation, so please do bear with us. If you have any problems, please put them in the chat box, and someone, probably Roberta or Sarah, will try to help address these. Please don't use the raise hand function. We're not going to be using it in this webinar. So enough of me. First up, over to Elsa and Hugues from Avignon, who are going to tell us about their work there, particularly focusing on peri-urban agriculture and local supply chains.
Bonjour, bonjour à toutes, bonjour à tous. À travers la première diapo, je voudrais en préambule exprimer des informations qui ont une importance au vu du projet. La particularité de ce projet, c'est que la ville d'Avignon et le périmètre, je dirais, autour de la ville d'Avignon n'est pas une terre d'élevage, mais une terre qui est essentiellement orientée vers la production végétale. Et pourtant, avec un peu de recherche, un peu de travail, nous comptons mettre en œuvre ce projet afin de fournir de la viande fraîche de qualité, donc moins de viande mais de meilleure qualité. Tel est le leitmotiv de notre projet sur effectivement un terroir essentiellement végétal. Allez, Elsa.
Ça marche pas. Ah, si.
Voilà.
Alors, pour continuer notre présentation et revenir sur des éléments un peu plus généraux, on tenait à situer géographiquement la ville d'Avignon à l'échelle de l'Europe, voilà, puisqu'on parle dans le cadre de notre participation au projet européen Food Shift. Donc, on a situé sur une carte tous les autres labs qui participent à ce projet et indiqué en rouge en évidence où est située la ville d'Avignon dans le sud de la France. Donc, c'est une ville de taille moyenne avec 92 000 habitants.
Climat méditerranéen.
Voilà, situé au bord de la Méditerranée ou presque. En tout cas, le climat est méditerranéen. C'est important de le préciser puisque ça fait écho à ce que disait Hugues précédemment. Au niveau production végétale, on est complètement au diapason des productions méditerranéennes. Alors, donc là, c'est pour resituer notre projet spécifique sur le fait de structurer une filière locale de viande de qualité dans le cadre général de notre participation à Food Shift, puisque notre objectif dans ce projet est d'offrir une alimentation de qualité pour tous au sens des usagers de notre service municipal de restauration quotidien, c'est-à-dire, pour parler de façon plus explicite, les cantines de la ville d'Avignon. C'est-à-dire que pendant 3 ans, via notre participation à Food Shift, nous allons explorer de diverses façons comment la commande publique et l'acteur public peut être un moteur sur un territoire pour construire et faire avancer, en tout cas poser les bases d'un système alimentaire plus durable. Donc ce projet s'inscrit complètement dans cette démarche. Nos 3 objectifs principaux, c'est d'augmenter le nombre de partenariats, autant en qualité qu'en quantité, avec des producteurs locaux. Donc ça a été traduit par producteurs verts, c'est-à-dire producteurs attentifs à la façon dont ils produisent, que ce soit des végétaux, de la viande, des produits laitiers, que ce soit source de qualité et de qualité pour les enfants, mais aussi, on parle des conditions de production elles-mêmes. Ensuite, le deuxième but, c'est d'augmenter plus généralement la qualité des repas à travers un focus sur les végétaux de qualité et frais. Donc là, on est paradoxalement dans le projet viande, on n'est pas forcément sur le focus sur les végétaux, mais quand même, d'une certaine façon, on l'est puisqu'on diminue la quantité de viande pour augmenter la qualité. Et le troisième axe, c'est de réduire et de lutter contre le gaspillage alimentaire, puisque ça, c'est un grand classique de tout site de restauration collective, publique ou privée. Alors, pour présenter plus généralement notre service de restauration collective, parce que ça nous semblait important de reposer le cadre. Donc, nous sommes en régie publique, ce qui a correspondu à un changement suite aux élections municipales de 2014, puisqu'avant, nous étions liés à un prestataire privé. Donc, ce changement s'est fait suite à une élection, donc au changement municipal. Et c'est la nouvelle maire de l'époque, Madame Cécile L, qui a tenu à inclure dans le giron municipal le service d'alimentation quotidienne via les cantines pour proposer une alimentation plus qualitative. Donc, ça a été le fil conducteur du mandat précédent et du mandat actuel qui vient de se renouveler puisque la maire a été réélue. Donc, nous, on a gardé notre axe, enfin, l'équipe de la cuisine centrale a gardé cet axe du mandat précédent au mandat actuel qui est d'augmenter qualitativement la proposition faite aux enfants dans les écoles. Alors, on parle des enfants, donc on parle de 650 000 à 680 repas servis tous les ans dans 37 cantines, donc 37 points de consommation. Et on parle d'enfants qui sont situés entre 3 et 10 ans au niveau de la fourchette d'âge. Et donc, on parle d'enfants, mais quand même, il faut préciser qu'on s'adresse aussi un petit peu aux personnes âgées via un service de portage à domicile, donc qui concerne 500 000 repas par an. Donc, c'est moindre, notre public principal reste les enfants, mais c'est important quand même. Et à ça s'ajoutent des centres de loisirs et ponctuellement une petite activité de traiteur. Alors, pour revenir sur notre démarche de développement durable à travers le service de restauration. Donc, depuis 4 ans, nous avons vraiment essayé de faire bouger notamment l'approvisionnement de nos produits, que ça soit sur le local ou sur le bio, ou sur le bio. Des fois, on essaye de cumuler les deux, d'aller sur de l'approvisionnement local et bio. Des fois, c'est que bio, des fois, c'est que local. Mais en tout cas, la démarche générale est là. On essaye d'aller vers ces produits, et notamment sur la viande, comme l'a dit Hugues précédemment. On essaye d'aller sur une viande plus qualitative, en baissant peut-être la quantité de propositions carnées dans nos restaurants. On essaye également d'être dans une dynamique motrice avec nos fournisseurs, puisque là, on parle de dynamique territoriale. Donc, on essaye d'être en échange avec eux et dans le fait de nouer des partenariats sur le long terme. Et là, comme on l'a dit aussi précédemment, on essaye vraiment d'avoir une action durable et continue contre le gaspillage alimentaire au quotidien dans nos restaurants. Je laisse la parole à Hugues pour revenir plus précisément sur notre projet viande.
Donc, encore une fois, effectivement, je prends la parole, mais surtout pour amener de l'information complémentaire que vous n'avez pas forcément sur le PowerPoint. Donc là, en préambule de cette diapo, je dirais que pour pouvoir réussir ce projet, il a fallu avant tout établir un maximum de contacts, de rencontres avec des personnes, des acteurs qui, au premier regard, n'ont pas forcément un lien direct avec le projet ou avec quelque chose que l'on pourrait faire ensemble. Ce projet a amené la rencontre essentiellement de 3 acteurs, donc la cuisine centrale municipale, qui produit chaque jour, donc, comme c'était dit, 4 à 5 000 couverts à destination des enfants des écoles, mais aussi des personnes âgées ou des centres d'accueil et de loisirs. Ensuite, il a fallu rencontrer des agriculteurs qui pratiquent une agriculture et un élevage respectueux à la fois de l'environnement, mais aussi de la condition animale, puisque nous nous engageons à travers tout le parcours de l'animal, effectivement. Et ensuite, il a été très intéressant d'intéresser de fait la jeune génération à travers l'apprentissage, puisque nous avons la chance d'avoir un établissement d'apprentissage des métiers de la restauration, des métiers de la boucherie et des métiers de la boulangerie sur la ville d'Avignon. Et c'est fort de ce contact avec les 3 acteurs que l'on a commencé à réfléchir à un scénario possible pour travailler ensemble. Il faut savoir que des contraintes liées à la fois à la réglementation française mais aussi européenne interdisent notamment à un centre d'apprentissage ou à un lycée de vendre, je dirais, ce qu'on appelle sa matière d'œuvre. C'est-à-dire que pour apprendre à être boucher, eh bien, il faut pouvoir travailler des carcasses de viande, pouvoir parer, découper, tout ça dans les règles de l'art. Mais une fois cette matière d'œuvre découpée, eh bien, il faut savoir que cette matière d'œuvre n'a pas vocation à être vendue. Elle est essentiellement, donc, de fait, distribuée au personnel et consommée sur place, dans le meilleur des cas. Ce qui est difficile, donc, dans ce contexte, c'est que le CFA des métiers avait la contrainte d'acheter de la matière d'œuvre, donc d'acheter des carcasses à des fins uniquement pédagogiques, mais n'était pas en capacité de les vendre. Parallèlement à ça, la ville d'Avignon, acteur public, qui est soumise aux règles des marchés publics et du Code des marchés publics européens, a la contrainte d'acheter via des marchés publics. Donc, il n'était de fait pas possible de travailler directement auprès de ce centre d'apprentissage puisqu'il n'est pas en capacité de vendre. Nous avons ensuite rencontré des agriculteurs, visité des exploitations, de façon à nous assurer que dans un périmètre restreint, nous étions tout de même en capacité de trouver des animaux d'élevage qui sont élevés dans le respect, dans des conditions, je dirais, optimales. Et c'est là où l'idée m'est venue, avec l'équipe de Food Shift et l'équipe de la cuisine centrale, de passer par la plateforme AgriLocal. Alors, la plateforme AgriLocal, c'est une plateforme virtuelle qui est mise en œuvre par la Chambre d'agriculture et qui met en relation des acheteurs publics et des fournisseurs, des agriculteurs, des producteurs, de façon à pouvoir acheter quelque chose. Et donc l'idée, c'était tout simplement, via cette plateforme AgriLocal, d'acheter non pas de la viande prête à consommer, mais d'acheter bel et bien des carcasses de bœuf auprès des agriculteurs via l'abattoir qu'ils ont choisi et qui est lui aussi entré dans les règles optimales de respect de la vie de l'animal, et de mettre ces carcasses à disposition du CFA comme une matière d'œuvre. En pratiquant ainsi, il n'y a pas de lien commercial direct entre la ville d'Avignon et le CFA des métiers, mais il y a uniquement une convention qui régit les règles de mise à disposition. La ville d'Avignon, de fait, mandate le CFA et l'ensemble des équipes d'apprentissage avec leurs responsables d'atelier pour, en son nom, réceptionner de façon complètement gratuite ces carcasses animales pour qu'elles soient transformées à façon. On s'aperçoit très vite que tout le monde est gagnant, dans le sens où il faut savoir que ce CFA des métiers a une dépense habituelle de plusieurs dizaines de milliers d'euros par an pour acheter de la matière d'œuvre qui n'a pas, je dirais, vocation à être ensuite valorisée, alors que là, nous lui fournirons sur l'année, avec une bonne planification, suffisamment de matière d'œuvre, alors là actuellement uniquement en viande bovine, pour pouvoir, de façon complètement gratuite, enrichir l'apprentissage des élèves. Lorsqu'on fait le bilan, les agriculteurs vendent au juste prix, le CFA fait l'économie de l'achat de la matière d'œuvre, et donc cette économie peut être consacrée à une amélioration à la fois de l'apprentissage, mais aussi de l'outil technique ou de l'outil pédagogique. Et la ville d'Avignon, de par la transformation à façon, va très certainement faire une opération blanche, voire une opération économiquement plus intéressante. Pourquoi une économie plus intéressante? Tout simplement parce que une carcasse animale se divise en 3 catégories de viande. Une première catégorie qui est la plus qualitative, qui correspond environ à 50% de la matière animale. Et ensuite, les catégories 2 et 3 qui vont, je dirais, dans une catégorie moindre, représenter chacune 25%. Le prix de vente juste pour les agriculteurs aujourd'hui, livré jusqu'au centre d'apprentissage, est aujourd'hui estimé à un prix maximum de 8 €. Mais c'est 8 € pour l'ensemble de la carcasse. Il faut savoir qu'aujourd'hui, en achetant auprès de professionnels de la viande française, dans une qualité qu'on pourrait qualifier à peu près d'identique, je paye déjà, la ville d'Avignon, quand elle achète, elle paye déjà 8 € effectivement le kilo de viande en seconde catégorie. Ce qui sous-entend que toute la première catégorie est largement au-delà. Et de fait, on devrait gagner 10 à 15% en plus économiquement qu'on pourra consacrer à effectivement l'achat de végétaux ou à poursuivre le développement en termes d'approvisionnement local. Et on s'aperçoit que dans ce projet, tout le monde est gagnant. Alors, ce qui est vraiment intéressant, c'est de se dire qu'au départ, comme je l'avais dit dans la première diapo, nous sommes sur une terre qu'on pourrait qualifier 100% végétale, et on s'aperçoit que en consommant moins de viande, puisqu'on estime en gros à 8 ou 10 carcasses annuelles le besoin pour les 680 000 couverts, je parle en bœuf uniquement, eh bien on s'aperçoit qu'on va aller plus juste. On va aller plus juste dans la qualité et, je veux dire, on est sur un approvisionnement qui rayonnera dans un rayon de 150 km maxi autour de la ville d'Avignon. Et on devrait, dans un prochain temps, d'ailleurs, se rapprocher encore, puisque nous avons identifié 2 autres producteurs, dont un producteur de race à viande en labellisation bio. Voilà.
Alors, pour revenir sur le timing du projet, donc c'est un projet, je pense que vous l'avez compris, mais qui est en cours de réalisation. Donc, on avance pas à pas. Vous avez pu voir sur la présentation qui s'affiche sur l'écran l'identification claire des tâches de chaque partie du projet. Donc, nous, les producteurs et le centre d'apprentissage des bouchers. Donc ça, c'est vraiment la définition des tâches de chacun. Donc, on est en train d'avancer chacun respectivement sur nos tâches, mais on avance aussi en parallèle ensemble, puisqu'on a parlé concrètement de partenariat, du fait de formaliser les choses entre nous, les acteurs publics et les acteurs privés. Donc, sachant qu'il y a 2 types de structures publiques là qui sont impliquées, la ville, mais aussi le centre d'apprentissage régional. Et ensuite, la phase qui s'approche maintenant à grands pas, mais qui n'est pas encore passée, c'est la phase de test qui arrive et qui permettra d'expérimenter si le projet fonctionne bien ou pas. Donc, on vous tiendra au courant quand on aura passé ce cap assez stratégique du test, puisque ça va demander une grande coordination générale de tous les acteurs impliqués dans le projet. Donc, on espère pouvoir faire le test là au printemps qui arrive. Et pour terminer, pour dire quelques mots de conclusion, donc vous avez pu comprendre, nous l'espérons, que ce projet est assez complexe, puisque là, on est à cheval sur vraiment des réglementations, du juridique, des choses qui sont quand même assez compliquées à manœuvrer, mais un projet passionnant et dans lequel s'investit l'équipe de la cuisine. Et ce qu'on voudrait souligner, en fait, c'est que ce projet nous a permis vraiment de réaliser l'importance des partenariats et du fait que l'acteur public, donc là on parle de la cuisine centrale, peut vraiment être un acteur moteur à l'initiative de contact avec les producteurs sur son territoire, et qu'en fait, le fait d'être en situation d'initiative n'était que positif, puisque ça nous permet en fait de brasser la diversité des acteurs du domaine alimentaire autour de nous, donc d'aller à la fois sur de la production, mais aussi de la transformation à travers les services du CFA, donc du centre d'apprentissage, et du coup d'imaginer des possibilités, des opportunités auxquelles on n'aurait absolument pas pensé au départ. Donc le fait de brasser large et de prendre des contacts divers et variés nous a permis de construire un projet qui n'était pas pensé au départ. Donc ce projet s'est formalisé pas à pas, petit à petit, au fil de l'eau, avec une vision, on va dire, ouverte des possibilités offertes par chacun, puisqu'on voulait aussi insister sur le fait que vouloir travailler ensemble, ça nécessite des adaptations, donc autant les acteurs privés que les acteurs publics, et autant du côté de la demande, donc nous, les consommateurs ou les mangeurs, que de la production. Donc voilà, c'est toutes ces adaptations réciproques sur lesquelles on voulait insister et qui ne peuvent aboutir et ne se passer positivement que lorsque le partenariat est établi sur des bases de confiance et de bonne entente réciproque. Ça nous paraît les bases à souligner. Voilà, un petit mot de conclusion. C'est bon pour vous?
Oui, c'est bon pour moi. Ce que je voulais dire, c'est qu'effectivement, on présente ce projet parce que effectivement, il a beaucoup de sens, mais il faut savoir que tous les projets que l'on mène conjointement, qui pourront faire l'objet d'autres présentations, tous les projets que l'on mène conjointement à côté de ça, sont des projets qu'on mène à peu près toujours selon le même schéma, c'est-à-dire c'est bel et bien, comme je le dis et j'insiste là-dessus, sur cette notion d'inventaire de nos territoires. Les inventaires de nos territoires, je veux dire, on n'a parfois pas la vision de ce que l'on pourrait faire avec notre interlocuteur, avec un partenaire. On n'a pas identifié forcément tout de suite la notion du partenariat. Elle se résume parfois à un seul mot: aliments, déchets, énergie renouvelable. Et c'est en fin de compte à travers des rencontres, à travers des échanges, lorsqu'on s'aperçoit que des objectifs qui n'étaient pas communs peuvent le devenir, qu'on avance. Donc voilà.
Voilà, on a terminé. Merci beaucoup pour votre écoute.
Merci beaucoup, Elsa and Hugh. Next up, we have Sally and Rasmus. I'm going to hand straight over to you to tell us about your work in Barcelona.
Great, thank you so much, Ben. Thank you, first of all, for having us here today. We're very happy to be joining all of you in presenting. And in just a moment, I should have control over the screen. Okay. Controlling the screen from someone else's computer is a bit new to me, but I think now I should have access to that. Okay, so during this section, both I and Rasmus Bjorn, and also I'm Sally Borden, I'm representing Fab Lab Barcelona, we will be discussing food tech. And this really gets to what Ben was saying about looking at age-old issues that have already existed and trying to apply a mixture of old and new solutions. And one of the ways that we are doing this is through innovative technology. So just so we have a rundown of what we'll be talking about today, I'll start a little bit with the context of Barcelona. And then we won't be talking directly about our food tech pilot, which is part of Food Shift 2030, but we will be talking about the approaches that we take here at Fab Lab and through Next Food and how it's applied in 3 cases. In a peri-urban and urban context in micro farms in a project called Romi, in an urban context with citizen growers in a project called Grow, and then in a professional and urban context with Next Food. So first, Barcelona, our location is right on the Mediterranean, so we're a really prime space for growing. A lot of different types of vegetables, fruits, you name it, we have it here, luckily. And we, this year, are the world capital of sustainable food. Now, this is something that the city is leading the effort for, but this comes through our signing on of the Milan Urban Food Policy Pact back a few years ago. Now, we have kind of the city has 4 motivating reasons to have us sign on to this, and that is first to promote healthy diets that are low in carbon consumption, so addressing really at the core the climate crisis that we're in through diet. The second is to promote local products and to be able to distribute them through the marketplaces here in Barcelona, and particularly through Mercabarna, which is a massive marketplace on the outskirts of the city, and that also helps bring vegetables and fruit all over Europe through our port location. The third is also to promote urban agriculture and make it a reference point in the city. And the last is to help form our 2030 food policy plan for the city. However, the city is not doing this on its own, of course. The actors in the peri-urban area and the urban area have been active for a very long time in the Barcelona context. We'll start first in the peri-urban context. We have about 4,000 to 5,000 hectares of peri-urban farming happening around Barcelona in 4 principal regions. The Baix Llobregat region, which is just south of the city, Barcelona is here, the Llobregat River area, Collserola, which is actually the mountain directly behind the city, and then the Valles Plain, so directly behind this mountain. And while this comprises about 4,000 to 5,000 hectares, actually, there are about 4,000 to 5,000 more hectares that are currently sitting abandoned because of not only the process of urbanization, but also young people leaving the city or leaving the agricultural areas, and it no longer being as viable and profitable of an industry. So this is something that the peri-urban farmers have really much banded together to try to protect the land and protect their livelihoods. For example, in Baix Llobregat, there is a very large agricultural park that's been protected there since the early 2000s. This is, of course, an ongoing struggle amidst urbanization and just the job opportunities. Then at a local context, currently we have over 120 urban gardens in the city. And while some of these were backed and supported and opened by the city, most of them were really put forward by citizens in communities. For example, there are citizens that are currently working on rooftop urban gardens, local plots and communities. And there are quite a number of urban gardens that actually occupied a space that was supposed to be dedicated to new buildings, specifically new luxury buildings. And community members took back those areas to make this community space and a space for interchange, something which obviously the communities and the neighborhoods do not want to lose, and which we are at risk at losing through gentrification. So I mention these things because, yes, while the city is a very active actor, these different groups have been in this fight for a very long time. And so now it's about trying to see how we can continue to find synergies and make this relationships compatible now that Barcelona is, as a city, recognizing moving forward with the World Capital activities and this new food policy. So how does this then fit into who we are at FabLab Barcelona? Well, we are an innovation center that is rethinking the way that we live, work, and play in cities. Why are we rethinking what we're doing? Well, we recognize that we are currently living in a crisis, and we are in the space of uncertainty, of having to deal with regular different types of crises, as we're seeing right now, living through a pandemic, and trying to understand then how this will work moving into an uncertain and emergent future. So for us, how we have to, or one of the tools that we use here to try to navigate this future and to try to come up with solutions for this future is to create technological solutions. So different types of technology for us could be platforms, they could be robots, they could be an app. It's also for us an implementation process. So not just the actual product, but the process. And we are looking at doing this in a way that breaks with the status quo, because we see that the status quo, which is privatized, which is Western, which is really kind of helped get us to this space of climate crisis, we don't want to replicate this. So we move with technological solutions that are open in design and implementation, open access. They are collaborative, looking to build ecosystemic partnerships and not just work in silos. They are informative to the people that use them and the people that the communities are applied to, and they are empowering for the users. So users really understand not only how to use the tech, but actually what is the technology? What are they introducing into their communities, and how is this actually helping them not only solve their solutions or their problems, but those of the larger community? And for us, what makes this truly even more radical, I guess, is how we're doing this, which is in collaboration with communities of practice. So we do not sit and say, hey, we think it would be a good idea to make a sensor that measures light. We go to communities, and with the community, we evaluate what their needs are and what their current struggles or problems are. And then alongside them, we help to find a challenge of, okay, this is what we are going to tackle. And then helping to create a piece of technology that meets that challenge. But it is not just making the tech and leaving it with the community. It is prototyping that tech in collaboration with the community, seeing what we have to change, and then iterating and repeating this process until we have a piece of technology that really fits with the need of the community. So I want to talk about now how we're using this approach in 3 cases related to food that I'd quickly mentioned earlier, but the first is in a peri-urban context with a project called Romy, the second in an citizen context with a project called Grow, and then I'll be passing the word over to Rasmus, who will talk about an industry urban application. So our first example is ROMI, which is an EU project that stands for Robotics for Micro Farms. So what is ROMI? Well, ROMI is a series of tools that are organized through a platform for micro farmers. So why did we actually make this? Well, we see that there are more and more micro farms and micro farmers emerging. A micro farm is a farm that is 0.1 hectares to about 5 hectares of land, and that the farmers that are responsible for these areas were in need of finding solutions to help with some of their most demanding tasks, but also trying to make them viable to compete with larger industries, which means making their planting more efficient and their productivity more efficient. So how have we done this in collaboration with farmers? Well, we've developed 3 types of robots. The first is a rover, which assists with weeding, which is one of the more tedious tasks and takes up a tremendous amount of time from farmers. The second is an aerial robot like this drone here, and we also have a cable version that helps to assess the land and assess the style of the land and understanding, okay, well, what should we plant where? And the last is a tool which allows us to scan plants and see what their current phenotype is. So that means where they are in their growth cycle. And we are able to take this information and put it into a platform that is not just accessible by one farmer, but is accessible to the network of farmers that are using these systems so that they can use collective intelligence to better plan their farming schedule. So this is a very specific peri-urban example, but we're also looking to strengthen the ties between the peri-urban ecosystem and the urban ecosystem. So we're currently testing ROMI in this area here, which is, this larger area is the Koiserola agricultural park that I've mentioned before. And this small area here is Valdaura Labs, where we are currently testing ROMI here in Spain. And we are not actually producing all of these tools right in that area. We are producing the tools at our office here in Barcelona, which is around here where my mouse is now. And we're taking advantage of the fact that in the city, we have a concentration of resources, of knowledge, and of the tools that can help us create these tools. And so we have this space here in the city, and we bring these robots into the test space in the mountain. And through this, we're able to help foster a better linkage between these spaces, because we want to highlight that we're not in competition. Anything that's happening in the city, whether we're growing things, we're making tools, is not in competition with the peri-urban area. We can create linkages that are supporting both of us. And one other quick example that I had mentioned is the project Grow Observatory. So as I said, that this is in an urban context in which we're empowering citizen farmers and communities associated with urban agriculture with open monitoring tools. So what does that mean? Well, it means that we've helped create, alongside this project, we've created a citizen platform and a community which is understanding land, soil, and water, and being able to monitor those resources so that we can foster citizen custodianship of these resources. This means that if you understand the resources around you, you can then better take care of them and also better utilize them in order to produce food for your community's needs. Something, oops, there we go. Something quite interesting about this approach is that Grow and the technology that we at Fab Lab helped to develop to support the Grow project, it was not a standalone. Here I have my fun box of things. And here you can actually see the data sensor that we used in the Grow project was part of another project called Smart Citizen, and through the EU project Making Sense, in which we developed a platform with sensors to monitor things like humidity, light, and temperature. And we were able to take this same tool, as it is open source, And we were able to adapt it to the community needs of grow. So this is kind of the magic behind working with open source tools, is that you don't start from zero every time. You take one piece of technology and you're able to adapt it to a new context, which then enables us to do something like in Grow, which was monitoring the humidity of the soil. This platform and this project has now extended to over 20,000 members across the world who are uploading information to a collective platform so that they are able to use this data sharing to help one another understand, okay, this is how you can grow in this environment, in this environment, in this environment.
Hi, Sally. I know we're still to hear from Rasmus and Bjorn, so we're going to need to wrap up and move on.
Sorry about that. Yep. And now, perfect timing actually, Ben. Rasmus will share an example of the urban context with professional farmers. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Rasmus Bjerngård from Nextfood. I'll be short, and I'll be a little extra short since we are running low on time. So I'll talk a little bit about vertical farming and how to radically change the food supply chain. As you can see here from the pictures, there's two variations, and you can also see my background here. That's from one of our farms. There's the big vertical farms where we grow plants in soilless, indoor, year-round, in a predictable environment. And there is the types of systems that sit out in restaurants, in catering, in retail, and really they're part of one system. It's all about changing the supply chain from farm to fork, and it's about making it more efficient to gain better nutrition, better taste, and to get to make it more sustainable. So to do that, we use vertical farming. So it's a tool for us, but we also use many other things. There's a lot of software in it, a lot of data and algorithms. The benefits we get, and of course you know why this is. We are a growing urbanized population, and we really need radical changes to address that. And this is not really a substitution. It's a complement. We don't see this replacing all kinds of farming, but it is well suited for a number of different things and a growing number of different things. So some of the benefits you see here, we save 95, actually 98% water, more than 75% fertilizer. We don't have any runoff, any water pollution. We don't use pesticides. We reduce or totally remove food waste because we have fresh plants all the way out to the consumption point, and so on. It really ticks a lot of boxes, if not all, and of course this is not changed in one day, but this is moving very fast ahead. One of the important things here to notice as well is that we electrify farming, which means that we can use sustainable energy. And really, what we're doing here is to make farming available to anyone, anytime, and anywhere, including inside the cities. In Barcelona, we have one experiment going on together with the Food Shift project, and Barcelona is a good example. Sally mentioned before that it's one big garden, more or less in the garden of Europe, and still it makes sense. So much the more when you come to the hot regions and the cold regions of the world. We are situated in Barcelona and in Denmark as well, slightly colder. The experiments we are doing in Barcelona in the Food Shift project are community projects. We are building a farm there, a big farm that can that grow food, and we are involving a little bit hampered by Corona, but we are involving the community and basically building community gardens that produce food efficiently year-round at organic prices and with involvement of the community. If we have time, very shortly, we grow without soil. Stop me, Ben, if we're running low. We're growing without soil. This is the technology we use is called Aeroponics. It's highly efficient, very precise. We can grow double the speed. We never go beyond the nature of the plants. We still want great food, but plants give us a certain room to play in their nature, in their DNA. They give us abilities to grow them in a good way, and we can push the buttons and pull the levers, being the environment around the plant. And the result is amazing. We're really fresh and very nutritious, super quality crops. Do we have more slides? Thank you.
Thank you, Rasmus and Sally. I think we're going to have to wrap it up there. I'm sure there'll be lots of questions about the approach, and there's lots and lots of interest in the chat box. Just a reminder, if you've got questions for the speakers, please put them in the Q&A. And if you've got any work that you're doing in a similar vein, put it in the chat box. It'd be great to hear about it. Next up, we have Bjorn Lowe from Edible Garden City to talk about the work in Singapore. Bjorn.
Hi everyone, thanks Ben. Thank you for the opportunity for me to share. So I come from Singapore and my name is Bjorn. I'm an urban farmer and a social entrepreneur. We've been running Edible Garden City for the last 8 years, based in urban agriculture. Okay. Right, a lot of the philosophies that we have developed were based on very Western centric concepts like biodynamic agriculture, permaculture. We found that over time we needed to adapt these concepts and ideas into something that fits within the Southeast Asian context and the space that we operate in. So I just want to give you a context of where we are at. So Singapore is a very small island, 719 square kilometers. It's the size of Isle of Wight, with then 5.6 million people on it. And as a very small nation, post-independence from the British, we were quite self-sustainable. We had quite a number of farms. 25% of our land was under cultivation. We're actually pretty efficient that we are exporting food in 1975. But post development, Singapore decided to go for a different kind of economic growth, and so today only 1% of our land is under cultivation, which then 90% of our food is being imported from 170 countries. Now this puts us in a very precarious position on food security. So the imports is heavily relied on our neighboring countries. A lot of times the imports come in cheap vegetables with heavy environmental costs tagged to it. So this is a site of Cameron Highlands in Malaysia, which produce about 60% of Singapore's leafy vegetables requirement. You can see the amount of devastation that happens in terms of landslide, water table tainting, and biodiversity loss. So I think in Singapore, we need to start to ask ourselves about certain environmental ethical questions about the cheap food that's coming into our city. Singapore has then pursued a very strong agenda on looking at food security. A lot of this initiative is driven by the State Investment Fund, Temasek, putting investment into big agri-technology companies like Bayer and Monsanto. It drives a very different narrative of what our food future will look like. And this entire push towards the new green revolution sees growth in vertical farms, indoor farms, sensors, technology, which in many times can be quite productive to plug certain gaps. But within the COVID pandemic, we have seen actually a lot of challenges as a non-agricultural country, having access issues on seeds, fertilizers, and all these were disrupted during COVID. So we need to rethink how to build a more sustainable agriculture practice in Singapore. So we want to look back a little bit at the history of our land and of what's endemic. Here is Mr. Tan. In him is a wealth of knowledge of 300 different local herbs and plants. But Mr. Tan will soon lose his space to the new agriculture agenda. he faces the same threat and displacement currently facing multi-generation soil-based farmers who will lose their knowledge once they get kicked out of the land for this whole new agri-technology push. And there's a need to kind of encapsulate that knowledge and really bring back the what's lost. We are kind of in the middle of the tropics, so we have very diverse flora and fauna. Here you have the wild passion fruit that grows wildly within Singapore. It's not really eaten, but it's so sweet and so beautiful. However, to understand a little bit more about how we can actually turn this into an opportunity is to look at Singapore's political policies. One of that is that Singapore has really pursued greening as a political agenda in the last 30 to 40 years. And one of that is that we want to be a garden city. So a lot of rooftop gardens have been built. A lot of times this is done in a way to attract foreign investment, to show Singapore as a very green city. However, there is an opportunity within this, and that has grown over the years to more robust policies built by the government to green the city. As you can see on the picture on the left, this is one of the buildings that has urban farms and greenery cover all around the building. What the government does is it encourages developers to actually put in a lot more greening by incentivizing them as well on creating more buildings with such footprints. Over the years, the government has also aggressively looked at food security policies by developing new agencies like the Singapore Food Agency, and we have set a target to produce 30% of our nutritional needs by 2030. This is an ambitious target because we're still at 10%. What this actually presents us is how do we turn the thousands of rooftop gardens now currently growing ornamental plants into productive foodscapes. We use a variety of different techniques using food plants to actually create a garden that is productive and also very biodiverse. Today, we have built 230 of these gardens all around Singapore to produce food, but also to activate the community and also to address environmental impact and challenges. And this approach and this methodology has guided us in developing every single space that we have developed and will continue to develop. And what we want to look at now is how do we not think as urban farmers anymore, but think as urban planners, or think in a way to change the mindsets of urban planners on how urban farms can play a bigger part within society and in urban planning, and how do we redesign an entire district into agri-hood. So we have done a series of experiments in the past, taking underutilized and dilapidated shop houses like this and converting it into a food production space. Food production was not the main objective. It was really bringing people together as a platform for food activists to come together to think about new solutions and ideas. And we looked under as well, under the roads, under bridges, and looked at spaces that we can activate for farming. We looked at philosophy on closed-loop farming by creating a black soldier fly insect farm to process food waste, convert that into organic fertilizer, and feed that back into our organic farming system. Singapore produces 700,000 tons of food waste per annum, but yet import 90% of the food. So there is a big disconnect. So we're trying to close that cycle. And we use our urban farms today as an alternative care center and to also provide employment for those most vulnerable in our communities, which is then also the socially isolated elderly that you see here. So some of what we have done is to go into these estates and to really identify the socially isolated elderly. Here you see a group of them, the guy in black, Mr. Lim. On week 1 of the project, when we brought them down to the community garden to get them to participate, he was very quiet and he kept looking down. There were signs of depression in him. at the end of the 6 weeks program, he couldn't stop talking. It shows what the power of the garden and putting a community together, even in such a small garden, can bring to these people that are so vulnerable and isolated. And what we try to do in these gardens is to bring back plants that are not eaten as often today, because we all eat with a global palate. We demand things from Europe, from all over the place, but there is such a compendium of vegetables, variety of vegetables that are local and endemic. We're trying to bring that back and use these gardens and use these urban farms as touch points to transfer this knowledge to the future urban farmers. And what we want to do then is to use these urban farms to really reposition what it can do, not only from a sense of food production, but also providing them broader care to the community in Singapore, elevate pressure on the medical healthcare infrastructure by using urban farms as care centers as well. And really to create that platform for future urban farmers. I just wanted to leave everyone with a quote from Masanobu Fukuoka. The ultimate goal of farming is not the growing of crops, but really the cultivation and perfection of human beings. I feel this really encapsulates what urban farming is about and where I hope everyone can pursue. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Bjorn. Fascinating presentation. In fact, 3 fascinating presentations. We've got lots of questions coming in, and I know a lot of them are being answered in the Q&A box. But I wanted to kick off with one that I suppose for me applied to a lot of the different work that that is going on that you're talking about, and use my chair's privilege to do so. I was wondering what you feel is this a magic ingredient that has led to this innovation in the first place, whether this is a particular person that has helped unlock it. I mean, we know how much individuals drive forward these change, or whether there was particular policies that help to unlock this this innovation and these fantastic achievements. I don't know, Bjorn, if this is something you want to answer first, and then we can hear from Barcelona and Avignon.
Sure, Ben. I guess a lot of it was kind of driven with innate need to want to change things and change the way things are being done. I think Singapore agriculture industry is very behind in many ways, but also a little bit advanced in other ways. Policy has also helped that quite a bit, but really it's the engagement with the community and seeing people go through their own journey of understanding where their food comes from, really sowing that seed and harvesting and failing and doing it again, and really participating in it, that really kind of drives us forward to continue to do the work that we do. I think it's really the community and the people, not so much anything else. Yeah, so that inspires us and drives us forward.
Thank you, Bjorn. Sally and Rasmus, is that a similar sort of situation in Barcelona? Is this community driven? Is policy acting as a barrier, or are the two working together?
Yeah, I think it's similar to Singapore. This is very much a community-driven issue. And then, I mean, we have an incredibly progressive government here in Barcelona, and we're very lucky for that. But a lot of the needs that the community is pushing forward right now is in response to legislation that exists that doesn't give much room for these types of actions. And this is because perhaps these actions weren't happening as much a decade ago, and so there was not policy to support them. But now that this is becoming a larger and larger movement in the city, and you have things like vertical agriculture within the city and urban farming becoming more of interest, the city is now in this position where they need to help support legislature and policies and to make sure that the communities can continue to do these actions. But I think here we have, it's really tremendous actually, the array of citizens that are involved in these efforts, from the very, very elderly to very young children are involved in these communities. I don't know, Rasmus, if you'd like to add something as well.
Yeah, I think there's some community effort, but it actually also needs to go beyond that. It's too slow. Our lens is Barcelona, Denmark, and then maybe Europe, but it's also worldwide. We have too much both red tape, just old ways of thinking, also subsidies for former ways, and that is outcompeting new ways indirectly. And I think actually good things that are still good things are sometimes blocking some of the new thinking. So I think the approach we need to climate change is really one of experimentation. We need to open up for experimenting. We don't know how to do the solution. It's something in the future, right? So doing everything in an Excel sheet just is not going to happen. So we need to let people explore and also fail, and that will be part of it. So we need to have there's some systemic change that is a big barrier, and law enforcement is part of it.
Thank you, Rasmus. And I think that's a sort of fundamental question. It'd be good if we have time to come back to, which is what are those barriers actually standing in the way of making these innovations grow? How do we make these good ideas spread? And hopefully we'll have time to come back to that. Elsa and Hugo, what are those sort of inspiration? What sort of helped to sort of lead that innovation in Avignon? Is it the policy, good policy basis, or is it sort of, individuals, community? I think I'm having some problems. I'm going to, Elsa and Hugo, I'll come back to you in a second. I suppose I wanted to maybe come back to you, Rasmus, and to Sally. One of the questions that's come up in the Q&A around and I was hoping you could answer this. One of the criticisms facing vertical aeroponic and hydroponic farming systems has been their high energy use, which has been said to make this economically unviable. Has that been an issue with your project?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I think there's two elements I'd like to add to that question, which I think is important. How about the climate impact? And the important part here is that we're electrifying agriculture, and electricity is, whether it comes from sun and wind or some other sustainable energy source, it is the form that we will have our sustainable energy in the future today, but so much more in the future. And we will see also a lowering of the cost, is my belief, of this energy form. But even without that, we are riding a semiconductor wave, we know it from computers that have become cheaper and cheaper. The LED lamps that we use are also semiconductors, and they are halving in cost, doubling in efficiency every 18 to 24 months. So that's one way. Another way is simply, or not, that's not simple, but it's technology and further research. So we do a lot of plant research and a lot of system research where we change the spectra we use, do different things to basically lower the energy usage. And that is both for the climate and for cost, of course. But this is actually why it's happening now. And because vertical farming has been known for 30 years, but it has, and I'm sure Bjorn can allude to that, because actually in Asia is probably where we have seen most of this when we go back in time. So yeah, it's really coming.
Bjorn, is that something you wanted to add to? Because I know in your sort of presentation around the breadth of work in Singapore, it felt like you felt that there was a place for technology, but it was and for this sort of farming, but it was one of many different strands.
Yes, Ben. I mean that there's been a big, massive growth on vertical farms, automation. It's all important to kind of provide for the gaps that are currently in the food system. However, I think to date, I feel we have quite a number of these container farm systems, indoor farming systems, to grow staple produce. So whether it's lettuce or kale, it is quite difficult to create a viable business model at the scale that we are operating. So it needs to be of a certain scale, and that scale requires heavy infrastructure investment, and which something that we do not have access to at this point. We have big indoor farms here that are in excess of $20 million investment type quantum. It takes a long time to turn around that kind of business model. What we found for urban farms, we have a very diverse revenue streams coming in. So we grow produce, we grow high value produce for restaurant trade, so edible flowers, microgreens, that makes it quite viable. But we then also look at community programs, so workshops, to impart knowledge, and people come, they pay for those programs. As a model, those two, it actually makes an urban farm commercially viable. At least that's what we have seen in the last 4 to 5 years running citizen farms. So, but again, things are changing rapidly and quickly, and so it's hard to say what will happen. But it requires all different solutions, all faceted different solutions that is driven to kind of have a better food future. So there's no right or wrong. There's no one system that's better than the other. I think all have its own merits.
I think it's an important point, and it's actually exactly what we're working with. We are looking into decentralized farming, because I do agree that the big, very centralized, huge warehouse kind of indoor farms, well, they may have merit in some ways, but there's some challenges with them, and we would like to see it much more democratized. We believe much more in local communities taking, local actors, partners. So we, rather than we as a company run it, and that's also one of the reasons why it makes sense for us to participate in the Food Shift project, in that we are learning about these things and trying to understand what works and what doesn't work. Can we, for instance, have a food sharing community, like sourcing local food from farmers and continue to do that, but also producing themselves suddenly all year round, and that just requires a totally different system, a different way of processes and thinking.
Thanks, guys. I think Elsa and you have sorted out the issues in terms of microphones, so it'd be great to bring them in. And if it's okay, maybe to kind of weave together a couple of questions. So I think sort of going back to that earlier point around what was the kind of key trigger in terms of developing that work in Avignon? Was there some policy support there? Was there a sort of key person involved, or as with Barcelona and Singapore, was it sort of more community driven?
Je pense que les deux. La particularité d'Avignon, c'est la conjonction de deux volontés. Pour revenir sur l'historique, jusqu'en 2014, la ville d'Avignon avait délégué sa restauration à un prestataire privé, une entreprise de restauration. Mais l'équipe de la cuisine centrale qui était en place à ce moment-là avait déjà fait des propositions en termes de lutte contre le gaspillage alimentaire, de quelques approvisionnements en produits locaux. C'est-à-dire que la volonté affichée de l'équipe en place était déjà clairement définie. Lorsque la municipalité a vu arriver aux commandes Madame Cécile L, maire d'Avignon depuis 2014 maintenant, l'une des promesses stratégiques dans ces deux mandatures était de reprendre à son compte la restauration pour mieux manger. Le hasard veut que la législation française oblige, lors d'une reprise d'entreprise ou d'une reprise même par un acteur public comment dire, d'une entreprise de fabrication ou quoi que ce soit, le personnel soit repris par la ville. Et ce sont en fin de compte les mêmes personnels qui étaient dans l'équipe privée qui ont repris le lendemain, je dirais, leur travail, mais en tant qu'acteur public. De fait, la volonté de l'équipe couplée avec l'axe stratégique de la mairie ne pouvait que fonctionner. Le gros avantage qu'a eu la ville d'Avignon, c'est qu'effectivement, la volonté politique a pu être traduite rapidement parce que la motivation était déjà là au sein de l'équipe. Et c'est ce qui a permis, je dirais, d'avancer de façon très rapide. Ça a été un véritable catalyseur. Voilà.
Thank you. Rasmus and Sally, I was wondering if I could bring you in. One of the things that was interesting about Avignon and also Barcelona was that setting of a target, saying, okay, well, this is the amount of local foods, the amount of urban agriculture that we want. And I was just wondering, is that something that you feel work in Barcelona? Does that already exist?
Sorry, Ben, could you repeat the middle part of that? I think my sound went out for a moment.
So I suppose I was just thinking with Avignon and Barcelona, they've both got these sort of targets or percentages of like self-sufficiency or sourcing of local food. I was just wondering, do you have a similar targets in Barcelona to say we want to have, you know, this much being grown in the city, or this much in terms of sourcing a percentage that you want to be sourcing locally or from peri-urban agriculture?
Yeah, okay, that's a really nice question. And from the city's perspective, right now, urban agriculture is very much treated as a social pursuit. And this is more I think the city stance, but also a lot of actors within the city that are working within urban agriculture, they see it as something that promotes community cohesion and social cohesion. And it can also help to promote reduce social isolation and help to bring people that are faced with social isolation into more contact with their community. And because this is kind of the idea, the city is trying to create more spaces that are meeting these social goals. However, there are more and more of us now that are trying to also make space for this idea that we can use urban agriculture to be as a viable mode of food production. We have here, for example, not only several areas of ground space, but even more importantly, in Barcelona, we have about 65% of our rooftops are available for use to potentially arm for urban agriculture, meaning that they are flat enough that they can support the proper weight, they're up to code, etc. And seeing as we have lots and lots of sun in Barcelona, this would be an actual viable solution. There are a lot of studies done on this topic, particularly by the Institute of Environmental Science and Technology, which is located through the Autonomous University of Barcelona. And they look principally at this issue and try to measure, okay, how many tomatoes could be grown on one rooftop over the course of the year and how many people would that feed? So we're using this research to try to push this idea that, okay, this is possible, and therefore now we should have more legislation that actually supports our ability to develop these spaces. But for the moment, it is very much considered more of a social pursuit, and the attitude from the public is that they don't really see it as something that, oh, we could really be producing the food that we eat in the city here. So the city supports more this peri-urban spaces as our local producers.
That's really interesting, and I think, as ever with this, what's the economic trigger that will actually lead that to happen? Because I think we've seen lots of sort of good ideas. We know there's loads out there. What's that tipping point? And I think there's something about understanding the economics of it. But I wanted to, and do jump in and respond to that. But actually, one thing first, I wanted to go to Bjorn on this, the target that Singapore has, 30% self-sufficiency by 2030. And I'm just thinking in terms of the space you've got, the landscape, the sorts of land, in order to achieve that, do you think that will necessitate a change of diet? Will Singapore folk need to be eating more veg particularly? Or maybe you already have a much, I'm going to say, healthier diet than certainly the UK.
That's a good question. I think that there are a few ways to look at it. I think we are at this point trying to recreate our current diet. So we have strawberries all throughout. Yet you can't grow strawberries in Singapore. So there are ventures out there growing strawberries in vertical systems that's climate controlled. Whilst there are actually an alternative to look at it, we have all these rooftop gardens that are already built that have ornamental plants on them. If we were to grow things that are more suited for the tropical environment, such as vegetables that are perennial type vegetables, they are quite productive. For example, the moringa tree that produces a lot of protein and these will then sort of solve some of the issues on the diversity of vegetables that will be available. I think also, so diet shift is definitely necessary. But if we are able to change that mindset and the diet shift, we can essentially change the way agriculture is done in the region, because we'll be demanding a different type of product that can be far more sustainably than what we are currently demanding from those countries. So it's a lot to work towards, but today still the intention is still to replace what we are importing, which I find can be a very tall order, because we just don't have enough space for grains. We can't grow rice, which is a big staple of the country, because just the lack of land space. So we just need to think outside of the box to meet that nutritional requirement.
Thank you, Bjorn. I wonder if this is something that either Avignon or Barcelona, you've looked into the sort of what impact your work has had in terms of diets, whether whether this is improved diets, and whether conversely you can actually sort of measure any sort of difference in terms of healthiness related to that. I don't know who would like to come in first on that. I'll let you unmute and jump in. Okay, we're going to have to wrap up soon, but there was, I suppose, and there were so many questions that I've got that are coming through that I'd love to see raised. Oh, Elsa, did you want to respond to that point on diets? On how the work you've done has maybe improved diet?
Do you want to comment on this? So one comment here that I think is sometimes not with vertical farming, that's often not really taken into account, is that we by making fresh produce, we really don't lose all the nutrients that we use during storage and transportation, and it really matters. When we talk about food safety for the 800 million people that are food unsafe, it's actually very much about nutrition. It's not about calories. And this comes from often more sensitive plants that don't grow easily in soil that corn and barley and these kind of crops, C4 crops, grow in. So it's not that simple, especially in regions where we don't have an infrastructure to support it. I think that some of the there's whole other and much more like exponential development possibilities in looking at these kind of aspects, but it's a whole other aspect than what's typically put on the plate.
Thank you, Rasmus. We're going to need to wrap up. I wanted to give the speakers one last chance or a chance for a final point, a sort of 30-second reflection if there's anything that you feel burning that you want to add. Bjorn, I'll let you go first.
Thanks for the pressure, Ben. So I guess having heard everyone speak, again, I feel that we all are part of this broader ecosystem, and a lot of times, a lot of these solutions that we put in are reflective of what someone else is doing in another part of the world. So I think these kind of platforms are very important for us to continue to share, to learn best practices or to learn failures. I think that is very important. What didn't work in your country, and maybe that wouldn't work, or why that will work. And we continue to share, and then perhaps we can all come up with a solution that can help us improve the food system. And I really hope that can happen in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good prompt and a brave idea. We should be running a festival of failure and talking about what hasn't worked. Use the alliteration, a food shift festival of failure. I don't know, that's maybe a bit negative. There's enough negativity around. Rasmus, Sally, any final thoughts?
I think that so many thoughts, but trying to wrap them up is quite a challenge, as Bjorn was saying. But just continuing to think about how we need to take traditional approaches and combine them with innovation, combine them with new technology, and not being afraid of new approaches. Use different techniques, they can work to support one another. It doesn't have to be peri-urban versus urban or tech versus traditional. They can complement each other and support one another. And I think that is our best shot of moving forward and creating these more productive urban and peri-urban environments. Rasmus, do you want to add something?
George, we really need systemic change, and to get above the bar, we need radical solutions. And it's a matter not about whether we can do it, but if we have the will to do it as humanity. And it's all about investing in it and daring experimenting with it.
Inspiring stuff. Thank you, Rasmus. Elsa and Hugo, any final thoughts? Any final points?
Oui, déjà merci beaucoup pour nous avoir accueillis. Ce que j'aurais eu envie de dire, c'est que ce partage est très intéressant. Maintenant, je reste persuadé à l'échelle de la France qu'il n'y a pas de terres incultes et il n'y a pas de zones inexploitables. Je reviens toujours sur le même leitmotiv, c'est que on n'a pas forcément conscience de ce qui est autour de nous pour créer la nouveauté. Et parfois, on réinvente des choses qui pourraient exister déjà sous une forme un tout petit peu différente. Nous avons choisi de vous présenter effectivement le projet de la viande uniquement pour vous montrer que 3 acteurs qui n'avaient pas forcément à se rapprocher au départ sont capables de mettre en place un projet très innovant. Dans un autre webinaire, on vous présentera d'autres projets qui ont été construits sur le même leitmotiv.
Thank you, Hugo.
Merci.
Elsa, I think we're going to have to wrap up now, I'm afraid.
Moi, je dirais dans le même sens que Hugues, sur le fait d'encourager tous les partenariats possibles et tout dans une approche vraiment territoriale, en fait. C'est ce qu'on essaye de faire au quotidien, territorial et local, de se dire qu'on peut monter autant de projets qu'il y a d'acteurs sur un territoire et que toutes les combinaisons sont possibles sur tous les sujets ou presque, et que les seules contraintes, qu'elles soient légales ou techniques, peuvent être résolues dans la plupart du cas quand il y a une volonté partagée de travailler ensemble. C'est ce qu'on a essayé de mettre en avant dans notre présentation et c'est important de le souligner à l'oral. Voilà. Merci beaucoup en tout cas.
Merci, Elsa. So that's all we have time for. I'd like to thank all the attendees, the speakers, the organisers, all those hardworking behind the scenes, Stephanie, Dominique, Regina, Luke, Roberta and Sarah, and to our translators, Laura and Lorenzo. I hope you've all handled the translations okay. I'll leave you with one final reflection. So we've heard about some fantastic work to increase urban and peri-urban agriculture from cities around the world. There are thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of other such examples we could have heard from. But we know we probably need hundreds of millions more. So how do we get good ideas to spread? So inspired by the US President's inauguration yesterday featuring the poet Amanda Gorman, I'd like to end with a poem. Don't worry, it's not one of mine. This is an excerpt from Adam Horovitz, who said, "Go into the towns and cities laden with produce and stories, your tongues ripe with carefully disguised science, the bare-bone facts dressed in the muscle of myth and memory. Too much fact runs off busy people, like water from compacted soil. Learn how to open them to the seeds of ideas, water them with stories, watch them grow." So there we have it. We need more stories to inspire us and inspire others. So I hope you'll join us for the next Food Shift Storytime in February, where we're going to be looking at food education in schools. Join us then. Thank you.